Day-to-day life does not provide the stressors adequate enough to maintain a healthy lifestyle for most individuals. We go to the gym, we fabricate an imaginary ecosystem in which physical fitness we're looking for becomes a prerequisite to making it in and out of those gym doors. How do we know that we're fabricating the correct ecosystem to get the most return out of our investment? How do we know that we're fabricating an ecosystem that's not going to potentially harm us or that's actually yielding the results that we would want? Instead of looking at the day-to-day things that look good, feel good, or maybe the new jazz on Instagram, let's try and find the outcome we want. Find a taxonomy for how we describe our training, progress, or regress certain movements. To dive in to Saw Everything Training, let us begin with a little volume maintenance in regards to our programming. How do we know what tissues are potentially going to get injured for exercise or training an individual? We don't. The best we can do is manage a program appropriately by trying to understand what the minimum effective dose for an individual is under these varying movement categories and at varying circumstances, whether that be velocity or intensity or load. It's going to be a lot of variables we're going to try and cover. We're going to narrow that down to the movement category or the anatomical side of things today. This is all within the assumption that these individuals are competent when performing the exercises you have selected, that they would actually apply to this category, as to say that their squat is using the tissues that would classify it as a knee dominant exercise and not leveraging the muscles that would classify it as a hip dominant exercise. With that out of the way, we can now look at what a progressive overload for these movement categories may look like for a CrossFit program. So with CrossFit, constantly varied high intensity functional movement, part of the experience is being able to yield something interesting, entertaining, or challenging to class on a regular basis. CrossFitters don't like monotonous, but monotonous does get the job done. So are we able to mimic the same movement category week to week, maintaining some sort of consistency, making it easier to adapt, making sure that we're hitting that 10 plus sets weekly of that movement category for the movements or the muscles that we're running to strengthen or grow? How do we do that without making the exact same thing every week? Well, keep the movement category in check, but we can vary up the stance that it's performed in or the plane of motion that the exercise is being performed in. And this way, we're able to manage the amount of stress that the movement category is taking by dispersing that across, once again, the different stances and planes of motion that we may be able to find there. If we just jot down what a general bulk, 96 sets of different varying muscle groups or movement categories throughout a 1 week span, this is a 5-day-a-week program. We go into week 2, we have 100 sets, week 3, 123, week 4, 123. So over here, we can see our total sets accumulated throughout the program. Some highlights: triple extension. We tend to have a lot of Olympic lifting and CrossFit, so it's something that we do want to develop varying intensities, so having the conditioning to manage high repetition, moderate load, or having the strength power output to be able to hit those 1RMs or relative heavy lifts within a Metcon. We can also see that hip dominant would be a close follow-up, as well as vertical pushing. So again, a lot of what we do is going up with weights, and a lot of things seem to be bilateral with a barbell. Ideally, we can mix up a lot of this. We see most of our gains being made in the bilateral, even feet, even hand position. But we can try and disperse the stress as much as possible through some more unilateral, whether that be side-to-side frontal plane mechanics or a front-to-back staggered stance, again, focusing on frontal plane, maybe transverse mechanics. So again, we can see what our total accumulated volume throughout the course of the program is, whether that be movement category, plane of motion it's performed in, or the stance. And we'll just try and manage that appropriately so that we're working somewhere between minimum effective dose, 10 sets weekly for that muscle group or movement category, moving upwards to 20, maybe 30 plus, to a maximum effective dose. That maximum effective dose is probably going to start showing signs when aches and pains kind of start to pop up, or you see the regular client base having some sort of annoyance. And some things that may also jog that sooner than later is if you have some sudden changes. If we went from knee dominant around 15 to like knee dominant around 7 and then back up to like, I don't know, 20 or something, that might be too drastic of a acclimation to the knee or to the knee dominant category to be appropriate with the amount of volume you're throwing at them. So this is all building from a minimum effective dose, preferably up to a maximum effective dose. It's going to be diminished returns. So we want to find the best fall off point so that we're not yielding aches, pains, injuries, but we're able to get the most out of our training. Variability does a really good job of making you less fragile. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of what a program design as far as progressive overload for volume may look like, and this way you can gauge that volume or that progressive overload via the movement categories and the stance that they're performed in. Hopefully that's helpful. Good luck, everybody.